Hey everybody, and welcome to Diginyall. On today's episode, we're doing one of my personal sweet tooth favorites. We are doing good old New Orleans style bread pudding, and I'm going to show you how to make sure you learn how to mix it up. It's all about doing things different, doing things fun, and making it all your own. We'll see you on the other side at the start of Dig In, y'all. And here we are in New Orleans. I've got myself a drink, and we are in the historic Jackson Square. The statue of Andrew Jackson right behind us, and of course the St. Louis Cathedral. What could be better than this? We're surrounded by people, artists, musicians. We've got it all. Welcome to New Orleans, y'all. It's time to dig in. Hey everybody, and welcome to Dig In, y'all. Today we're doing another one of my personal favorites. We're doing New Orleans style bread pudding. The great thing is you can do it in a million different ways. You can make it your own, taste it, whatever flavors you like, do things differently. It's all about what you like and what you want to do. Now, growing up, let me tell you, bread pudding was one of my favorite desserts. And just to show you that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, I know it was my daddy's favorite. So there's a lot of different things you can do. Growing up, not a big fan of raisins, still not a big fan of raisins. They almost resemble something healthy, so I don't do them. Now granted, Mama used to take her raisins and soak them in brandy for a couple of days before she put them in her bread pudding. She said it made them good. It's still a raisin, still not my favorite thing. So today we're gonna do all kinds of different ways that you can do a great New Orleans style bread pudding, make it your own and put whatever your flavors are, whatever you like, whatever you enjoy, and make it all yours. Because remember, if it's not your style and it's not your flavor, it's not worth doing. Don't do something just to make me happy and make it my own recipe, my own way of doing things. You want to do something that makes you happy. The reason we're doing this episode is we are still in Mama's Kitchen in Covington, Louisiana. We are still enjoying all the local flavors. Let me tell you, we are eating and drinking up a storm. Speaking of which, kind of missing a drink right now. So I'm gonna go back to one of my old time favorites, Jack and Ice, because let's face it, I'm gonna use Jack Daniels in my bread pudding. Why? Because it's my favorite thing to use in pretty much just about anything. So got my bottle of Jack, got my ice. Remember, we're not wasting space with anything else. We're not mixing it with ginger ale. We're not mixing it with club soda. We're just gonna pour that Jack on ice, let it melt a little bit, and we'll have ourselves a good old time. The great thing about bread pudding is you don't use fresh bread. You want to use bread that's stale and dry, and if you can't have any stale bread, then go buy yourself a good fresh baguette, throw it in the oven, toast that puppy up to get it good and crispy and dried out. Now, what I love to do is throw a dinner party and buy a bunch of extra bread, and when people don't actually finish eating it all because they're watching their carbs or whatever ridiculous reason they have for not eating bread, and believe me, I've heard some ridiculous reasons. We're gonna take our bread, let it get nice and dry and crispy here. But before we move any further, I'm gonna have myself a little sip. That was a big sip. That's gonna be some good bread pudding. I can tell you that right now, or I just won't care, one of the two. We've got ourselves some good dried out bread here. Simple, simple, simple. Eggs, sugar, butter, cream. Any of you people who are gonna go and use skim milk for a bread pudding, you got a problem. You wanna use the real deal. Use half and half, use heavy cream, use salted butter. Put all that stuff that's all meant to be good and good for you. Good for you in the sense of they're not putting chemicals in it, taking things out of it. You wanna use the real deal. So we're gonna do that. Now the reason we're doing bread pudding is one of our viewers, Sally, sent us a tweet message about 2 weeks ago and said, I want to do a good New Orleans dessert, but I'm not sure about the flavors I want. Here's the beauty of bread pudding. Let me tell you right now, you can do whatever you want. You can toast up some pecans, you can toast up some walnuts, toast up whatever kind of nuts you like. Just get your nuts good and toasty and throw it in your bread pudding. If you want, you can do a dark chocolate one. You can do, today we're gonna do pumpkin. You can just do a good old vanilla and cinnamon. It tastes like a big old cinnamon roll in your oven, and I guarantee you, you'll wanna have it for breakfast and dessert. Bread pudding is one of those things that'll keep for a good solid week. Be sure when you make your bread pudding, you make enough for yourself, your neighbor, your mama, because you know they're all gonna come over the minute you start baking this, because that smell's gonna be just about everywhere. It's not a time go by that I don't make a bread pudding that somebody doesn't end up in my kitchen with me eating. So whether you're at home or you're at a friend's house, it makes a great dessert to take somewhere. There's a few helpful tips that we're gonna give, and we're gonna kind of go to it. So we've got 2 big loaves here of nice, crispy, crunchy, dried out. You can hear that, can't you? It's all dried out and crunchy. It's almost like a bunch of croutons. So we've got that good and dry, and we've got this in a pan. We've got our heavy cream over here, but I'm just gonna go in, reach in and grab some sugar, and we're gonna go ahead and sprinkle that over the top. We'll sprinkle that over in our bowl over here. Some cinnamon, because everything is better with cinnamon in it. Don't use that old cheap stuff. Go get yourself some good cinnamon. It's like vanilla. When I talk to you about vanilla, people buy that cheap imitation stuff. It just don't work. Get yourself some good vanilla. Plan on a nice and messy kitchen when you make bread pudding, because you should have stuff just flying and floating everywhere. We're just gonna put a little bit of that on there. We're gonna grab our bourbon. This is the part that usually makes people nervous. We're just gonna go ahead and, we don't measure in the South, we just dump. I don't think I ever saw, whoops, we got some on the counter. We don't wanna waste that. Just dump all over our bread. Man, cinnamon and bourbon, how do you go wrong? Sounds like a good combination to me that you can't mess up. So we've got our bourbon going now. We've got some cinnamon, we've got a little bit of sugar. We got some other stuff going on over here with the cinnamon and sugar and the bourbon. In our bread over here, we put a little bit of sugar on everything to sweeten it up. Now the other thing we're gonna start to do is, once we've got all this done, we have a pan with some melted butter in it. Our oven is on 325. We have a water bath going on in there. What's a water bath? Well, imagine folks, when you like to lay down in a tub after a long hot day in a nice hot bath, we're gonna do the same thing to our bread pudding. We're gonna get our bread pudding nice and relaxed. We've poured it a big old drink by pouring some bourbon on here, and then we're gonna, when we're done putting it all together, we're gonna put it in that nice warm bath in the oven. It's just gonna like, it's just gonna relax. It's exactly what we wanna be able to do. The same way you and I wanna unwind after a long day at work, having ourselves a little drink on some ice, we're gonna let the same thing happen to our dessert. What's good for you is good for your dessert, don't you think? So I think what we're gonna do now is, we've got all this laid out, we've got all kinds of flavors that we can talk about. Remember, we talked about Sally who tweeted us. Don't forget, you can find all these recipes and all these variations on www.awholeheap.com. You can follow us on Facebook at A Whole Heap, or you can even tweet us at Whole Heap. Feel free to keep those questions coming, keep those inquiries going on, and on the other side of the commercial break, we're gonna start putting all this together. We're letting that bread relax right now. It's had a good drink of bourbon. I've had a good drink of bourbon, and we're gonna come back on the other side of the break. We're gonna mix it all together and put in that nice warm water bath and have ourselves one great dessert and breakfast the next day. Y'all come back, and remember, dig in. And welcome back, y'all. Our bread is good and relaxed. It's had its bourbon. We've got a warm water bath going in the oven that we'll be able to put our tray of bread pudding right in and let it relax and sit and bake up all nice and good. Now we're gonna talk about a few things that you can do with your bread pudding. So what we're doing is, we've got a half a stick of melted butter in a pan right here. We're gonna start adding our heavy cream, or half and half, either one depending upon what you want. So I'm just gonna pour this over. Oh, all that delicious goodness. I tell you, it's just soaking all that up, going right into that bread. A little creamy shower we got going on there. Throw a little bit more of that over. The bread right here. Oh, I am thinking about when this is ready to go. I am so ready to eat this right now. A little bit extra for good measure. We make a mess, it's okay, it all wipes up, folks. It's just a little bit of half and half and heavy cream. So here's the great part. Now that we've got this, we're gonna let this start to soak. Remember, we let it drink up all that bourbon and all that deliciousness? We're gonna let it do the same thing with that half and half. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna make, some people wanna mix this through, I call it my topping. Today, we're gonna do pumpkin bread pudding. It's one of my absolute favorites. I am completely and totally obsessed with this pecan pumpkin butter that I get at Williams-Sonoma. So much so that I buy 2 cases every year and I hide it. It doesn't go in the pantry at home. It doesn't go in the pantry at the set. It goes underneath the bed because I want to be close to it. It's all about having that deliciousness nearby, and it's something that I want to keep all year round. It's all about having something good that you can kind of go back to. And if in the middle of spring you want to have that feeling of fall and you want to remember those warm, happy holiday times, you whip out a little bit of pumpkin butter and smear it on something, and that nutty, smoky allspice and pumpkin pie spice, all those good flavors of nutmeg and allspice and cinnamon and toasted pecans. That warmth just fills your whole house and fills you with happiness. So we're gonna go ahead and start making what I call that topping for that bread pudding. We're gonna let this bread sit here and soak up all that yumminess. Now, there's a couple of arguments on what you can really do. You can do 4 eggs or you can do 5 eggs, depending upon what you wanna do. If you remember last season, I talked about, I always use, sounds like a little bit of ring-a-dingy there, I always use extra large eggs. The reason I use extra large eggs is a large egg, yeah, it's nice, but why not have a little bit extra? It's kind of the same thing that we talk about all season long. A little bit of extra never hurt anybody with anything. We're just gonna break these eggs up in here. We could do a whole one-handed fancy there. We could just kind of keep doing that. So we've got our eggs broken up in there. Wipe our hands off a little bit. So we've got 5 extra large eggs here. Real good, real yummy farm fresh eggs. Never a bad thing to have. We'll mix in about 4 tablespoons of cinnamon, more or less. I love a little cinnamon cloud because it smells so good. We'll throw a little bit in there now. We'll throw a little bit more in there later. Now remember, we used a little bit more than 2 cups of sugar. Why a little bit more? Because remember, I wanted to sprinkle my bread with it. I wanted to get those little crunchy bits. I want to have some of the sugar and all those little pieces in there. We're going to throw a little bit of sugar in there for now. Vanilla, vanilla, vanilla. Don't use that cheap junk. We're going to use about 4 tablespoons. Oh, that brown goodness there. We're going to save a little bit, hold it back. We're going to slowly start to mix this up and break our eggs up. And I already hear what y'all saying at home. What about the pumpkin butter? What about the pumpkin butter? You want to mix this first and get this going. Get a good, look at that. Some brown deliciousness. Everybody makes fun of me because everybody talks about, God, Southern food is an awful lot of brown. I want to find one person that tells me this brown doesn't taste good. Photographer, I know Jason always tells me, brown can be sexy. Nothing wrong with a little bit of sexy brown there. So we got that mixed up, all looking really good. We're gonna go ahead and throw in the rest of our sugar. That is smelling some good, y'all. Now for my absolute favorite, a little bit of that pumpkin butter. When I say a little bit, a jar. Remember, everything is go big or go home, y'all. Do it once, do it right. You know, my daddy's favorite word, I can hear it every day. Moderation, moderation. Not when it comes to pumpkin butter. More is better. So we're gonna go ahead. We've got 1 jar in. We're gonna go ahead and mix this up. Remember, brown deliciousness, y'all. Look at that. I can already hear the health department and everything else. But you know what I'm gonna do? The same thing I did last year with that rum cake on season 1. It's got raw egg, y'all, but you know what? That's good. Our bread is good and soaked. We're good and ready to go. We got about 1 loaf in here and 1 loaf in here. We've got a half a stick of melted butter. We are just gonna dump this right into that melted butter pan. Look at that. Oh, that just gets me all excited. Looks delicious. We're gonna move that around and kind of get it smashed in. We'll take a little bit more, throw it in there. Since we all know what a sucker for cinnamon I am, grab a little bit more cinnamon, sprinkle that sucker over the top. Oh man, brown deliciousness. You heard it here, you've heard it several times. Hashtag it, send it out there, get it out there. We'll grab a little bit more pumpkin butter, throw this in there. There's nothing fancy about this. If you were to do dark chocolate and you wanted to do a dark chocolate bread pudding, guess what? All you're gonna be doing is grabbing that chocolate and throwing it all over in here. It's super, super easy and super, super delicious. There's nothing fancy or difficult about a good bread pudding, y'all. If you're gonna use nuts, this is when you throw your toasted nuts in. And just go ahead, and if I were using chocolate chips, I'd use about 1.5 cups of dark chocolate because I'm a dark chocolate fan. On the other side of the break, we're gonna finish putting this sucker together. We are gonna make a little drink, and we are gonna pull out one of the best bread puddings out of that oven you have ever seen. Y'all come back and get ready, because we're gonna dig in, y'all. Welcome back, y'all. Just finishing off the last of that pumpkin butter. Never a bad thing to do. All over your hands, never a bad thing to lick your fingers. It's all gone in the oven, it's not a big deal. Everything is gonna cook off. I ain't got nothing nobody's gonna catch, so we're all good. So we're gonna grab the last of this soaked up bread. We're gonna just throw it on top. So we've got layers of flavor. Look at that. That heavy cream is just dribbling out of there, and look at that. A little bit of Jack Daniels in there. Nothing wrong with that. Just kind of get it good and set. There we go. Get that out of our way. Now, we made this delicious mixture earlier. Now look how hard this is to do, y'all. We're just gonna take this and go, oh, look at that pretty brown liquid. Now when we slowly pour all this over, guess what's happening? Any little crevice that doesn't have that heavy cream in it, any little crack that doesn't have that Jack Daniels in it, guess what's going in there? All that pumpkin and cinnamon and Jack Daniels and all that goodness. All those good seasonings. How can you go wrong with this? Let me tell you, folks are gonna wanna eat this up. I'm gonna warn you right now, you don't ever make one of these, you make 2. Because you're gonna have people coming over, you're gonna have people wanting it for breakfast, you're gonna have people wanting this and that and the other. I brought one of these over to our friend Rose over at her car dealership over at Lexus, and let me tell you, they ate that up so quick, I got a phone call. Why don't we have another one? Well, if you'd return the pan, you'd get another one. So here we go. We just dump all that brown goodness on there, and look at that. What is not hot and holiday and delicious about this? You cannot go wrong with this, I am telling you right now. So now I'm gonna grab a little extra something, something. You know I like to kick things up a little bit, add a little extra flavor, a little extra pep, a little get excited. So we're just gonna go ahead and sprinkle a little pumpkin pie spice over the top. And oh, it makes me happy. This is gonna go in that warm water bath, and when that warm water bath, it goes in there, it's gonna just kind of go, it's gonna be relaxed and all happy, and it's gonna be good. But now I'm gonna talk to you about a little something that's really important to me. You know, every year I do a big charity event in the spring called Hogs for the Cause. It benefits children with pediatric brain cancer. How can you argue with that? Every year, I'm part of Team Puerto Rico. It's a bunch of friends, a bunch of New Orleanians, and a bunch of crazy folks who all come together and cook on that pig to make one of the best events in the whole city of New Orleans. It's delicious, it's fun. This year it's gonna be Johnny and Stacy and Ethan and Jamie and all of us fun folks doing pop-up restaurants for a great cause, fighting and trying to find a cure and helping families of pediatric brain cancer patients. You know, 2 years ago we did a bacon rum bread pudding. So we used a good Puerto Rican rum. I'm not gonna tell you which one we used because you never know, they may come around. So we're gonna go ahead and we did a bacon. We used 2 pounds of rendered bacon. And instead of using butter on the bottom of our pan, guess what we used? My friend, the bacon grease. I told you I love that bacon grease and you use it for anything. Last year, bacon rum cakes. Why put oil when you can put rendered bacon grease and mix a little of that good old pork bacon loveliness into your dessert? Desserts can be sweet and savory, and that's one of the things that we love to do. So we've got this good mixture going here. We've got a lot of delicious things happening. And one of the things that we're gonna talk about is, look out, this sucker goes in the oven, it bakes, your top is gonna get good and crispy and crunchy, and that bottom is gonna be nice and custardy. You're gonna have layers of texture. So kind of at the bottom, it's that good, moist layer. In the middle, it's kind of moist and starting to dry out, and the top is gonna have crispy deliciousness. Now, I will tell you something. If your bread pudding looks like it's not gonna be quite moist enough for you, you have a couple of options. One, get a little extra milk or a little extra half and half and pour it into the corners. 2, make a little extra topping and pour it into the corners. 3, grab your Jack Daniels or your rum or your Baileys or whatever you want to use and just do a little bit around the edges like that before you throw it in an oven. Remember, your oven's going to be at 325. It's going to be in that nice warm water bath where it can kind of go and chill out and relax. Your top is going to get nice and crunchy and toasted. Now, the next day, everybody's going to say, you got any of that bread pudding left? You tell them no, because let me tell you why. Because you are going to go over to your counter, and you're going to take that bread pudding out, and guess what? Look what I got for you. I got the second one. Now remember, you don't tell anybody else that you made a second one. This one's yours. This is all about being a little greedy or sharing a little bit with your family. So what I like to do is, Mama's got a great recipe in my cookbook, Whole Heap of Goodness. She makes her own amaretto. So what I do is I grab my coffee cup, I grab a little bit of Mama's amaretto, pour it in there, a little bit darker than normal amaretto because it's really good stuff. Little bit of coffee. And remember, it's good old New Orleans coffee. This stuff is strong. It's like mud. Little bit of that. And once you mix these two things up, guess what I got? I'm going in. I could go in with a little spoon, but why bother? Look at that. Now this is breakfast of champions. Don't let anybody tell you differently. You can go in, look at that. The top is nice and toasty and the bottom is nice and moist. And oh, you should smell that pumpkin. You should smell that yumminess. Look at that, we can put that right there. Look at all the color that we got going on, the texture we got going on. This is a good New Orleans dessert, y'all. But not only is it a good New Orleans dessert, it's a better New Orleans breakfast. Why have beignets when you can have bread pudding? That's what I always say. Now that's good. What makes it better is that little special coffee you got going on. Remember, take a big slug and enjoy the deliciousness. The sweet taste of deliciousness. Now remember, next week we are gonna have ourselves a good time. We're gonna be doing all kinds of yummy stuff. And don't forget, we're gonna be drinking. But don't worry, we're gonna have some great recipes for you and do great things. Y'all come back and remember, dig in, y'all. Crispy and crunchy and soft on the bottom, buttery on top. It's like croutons made love and had a family. Good. See that crunch?